Senna and Prost, they didn't just compete, they existed in opposite orbits destined to collide. It began in 1988 with McLaren's MP44, statistically the most dominant F1 car ever made, winning 15 out of 16 races. They were teammates, but only on paper. Prost was the professor, smooth, tactical, subtle. Senna, the warrior, hyper-focused, raw speed molded by divine belief. When Senna joined McLaren, Prost welcomed him, briefly, until Portugal. Senna, defending the lead, squeezed Prost towards the pit wall at over 280 kilometers per hour. Prost kept his foot in, finished second, and made it clear. This was no friendship. They shared the podium, smiled. But behind the scenes, the trust cracked. Senna saw politics. Prost saw recklessness. By 1989, Prost had grown tired, not just of Senna's moves, but of what he believed was bias from Honda and favoritism from McLaren. He struck a private deal with FIA President Jean-Marie Balestre. In exchange for support, he gave McLaren his exit plan. He was off to Ferrari for 1990, but not before Suzuka. That race in '89 is legend. Prost leads the championship. Senna needs the win to stay alive. With 7 laps to go, Senna dives into the chicane. Prost turns in. They crash. Senna restarts, charges through the field, crosses the line first, only to be disqualified post-race. The FIA claims he rejoined dangerously. The title, Prost's. The decision, controversial. The intent, questionable. Senna goes ballistic, calls the FIA corrupt, accuses Balestre of rigging the title. McLaren defends him publicly, but pressure mounts. The feud becomes larger than racing. It becomes ideological. Senna the purist, Prost the politician. 1990, same venue, Suzuka, same stakes. If Senna takes Prost out, he wins the title. He does. Into turn 1, flat out, Senna never lifts. They crash. Both retire. Senna's champion. The crowd is stunned. McLaren is split. Years later, Senna admits the truth in a documentary. I did it on purpose, because if you play dirty, I played dirty too. It wasn't racing, it was revenge. They would race again, even share a podium in later years. But that chapter was immortalized not because of respect, but because of resentment. Fast forward to 2014 Mercedes, a dominant force again. Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. Childhood friends, go-kart teammates, but when you're both fighting for the same throne in the same machinery, nostalgia means nothing. Hamilton was the faster one. More raw, more naturally gifted. Rosberg, methodical, data-driven, a relentless worker, and just like Senna Prost, their styles clashed. In Bahrain 2014, they had their first proper duel. Lap after lap, they swapped places clean, brilliant racing. But by Monaco, the cracks formed. Rosberg ran wide in qualifying, bringing out yellow flags and stopping Hamilton's flying lap. Pole position, gone. Advantage, Rosberg. Hamilton believed it was deliberate. The trust died. Then Spa, Belgium, 2014. Lap 2, Rosberg, trying to pass, clips Hamilton's rear tire. Puncture, Hamilton retires. Rosberg finishes second. Mercedes is furious. Toto Wolff slams his headset. Lauda calls it unacceptable. Hamilton tells media, we're not friends. And it only escalated. By 2016, it was war. Barcelona. Both crash on lap 1. Double DNF, team orders ignored. Then Austria, Rosberg pushes Hamilton wide on the final lap. Hamilton wins. Rosberg gets a time penalty. Every week felt like a title decider. The final blow, Abu Dhabi 2016. Rosberg wins the championship, then retires 5 days later. No title defense, no rematch. Just silence. Hamilton doesn't congratulate him, doesn't speak about him. The respect, buried. Go back a few years, 2007, Alonso versus Hamilton. Alonso was the double world champion. Hamilton, the rookie. McLaren thought they'd fight Ferrari, but they ended up fighting each other. Monaco Alonso blocks Hamilton in qualifying. Hungary pit lane chaos. Internal sabotage. By Belgium, Alonso threatens Ron Dennis with Spygate evidence. Leaked Ferrari data. $100 million fine. McLaren loses all constructors' points. Alonso leaves. Hamilton stays. McLaren lost the title by 1 point. Kimi Raikkonen won it. Ferrari laughs. The media calls it the biggest implosion in F1 team history. This wasn't just ego, it was betrayal at every level. Rivalries that began on track ended in legal rooms, press wars, and ruined dynasties. F1 isn't a sport where rivalries stay clean. They go nuclear when the stakes are high and the teammate is your only real enemy. And that was only the beginning. Michael Schumacher didn't just dominate F1, he fractured it. His rivalry with Damon Hill in 1994 set the tone for an entire era. That season, Benetton's Schumacher was rising fast, winning 6 of the first 7 races, but controversy was already brewing. Technical irregularities, illegal driver aids, and disqualifications left a cloud hanging over the paddock. By the time they reached Adelaide, Schumacher led the title by a single point. Hill was waiting. Lap 36. Schumacher hits the wall, damaging his car. Hill tries to pass. Michael turns in, makes contact, both cars are out. Hill climbs from his cockpit stunned. Schumacher wins the championship, but debate explodes. Was it calculated? Was it desperation? Hill later said everyone saw it, but no one wanted to say it. The FIA called it a racing incident, but history didn't forget. Neither did Hill. 3 years later, it was déjà vu. 1997 Jerez. This time it's Villeneuve in the Williams. Schumacher again leads the championship, again under pressure. Again, he turns in aggressively as Villeneuve attempts a pass, but this time, it backfires. Schumacher's car ends up in the gravel. Villeneuve finishes third and takes the title, and Schumacher is disqualified from the entire championship. Not docked points. Erased. The only time it's ever happened in F1 history. The FIA called it dangerous and deliberate. His legacy took a hit it would never fully repair. Then came the subtle internal war, Schumacher versus Rubens Barrichello. They were never rivals in the traditional sense, but what played out at Ferrari between 2000 and 2005 was one-sided dominance bordering on psychological submission. Austria 2002 was the moment that broke the illusion. Barrichello was leading. Schumacher couldn't catch him. The race was his, but Ferrari ordered Rubens to move over on the final straight. He did. Schumacher won. The crowd booed. Even Schumacher was embarrassed. He tried to put Rubens on the top step, gave him the trophy, but the message was clear. One driver mattered. Schumacher won 5 straight titles. Rubens, a pawn. Their dynamic wasn't a rivalry. It was a reminder of what power looks like when unchecked. And then, like history repeating itself, another Red Bull civil war unfolded. This time, Sebastian Vettel versus Mark Webber. 2010, Turkey. Red Bull 1-2. Vettel moves on Webber. They touch. Vettel spins out. Webber limps home third. Horner blames Webber's positioning. Mark is furious. But that wasn't the breaking point. The shattering came in 2013. Malaysia. Multi-21. Red Bull gave the order. Car 1 stays ahead of Car 2. Team orders. Vettel ignored it. Passed Webber with force. Took the win. Webber didn't even celebrate on the podium. He stood still, arms folded, eyes blank. Later, in the media pen, he said, "Seb made his own decisions today, and will have protection as usual." It was deeper than disobedience. It was favoritism. Vettel won 4 straight titles. Webber left the sport. Years later, in documentaries and interviews, they both admitted there was never true trust. Red Bull made their choice early, and that decision shaped everything. But not all rivalries come from dominance. Some form in silence and subtle glances, coded team radio, or awkward interviews. Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz were the ultimate PR duo in 2020. Funny, charming, meme-friendly. But under the surface, the competition was real. Sainz had joined McLaren in 2019 to rebuild. Norris was the fresh rookie. For a year, Carlos led in points, strategy, development. Then came 2020. Norris takes McLaren's first podium in 6 years at the Austrian GP. Suddenly, the balance shifts. Carlos starts exploring options. Ferrari calls, he leaves. Their friendship remains. But in interviews and off-track banter, the tension is obvious. When Lando scored pole in Sochi 2021, Carlos jokingly said, "Just don't bin it." When Carlos got his first win in 2022, Lando joked back, "Took you long enough. Friendly fire? Maybe." But the scoreboard never lies. And it wasn't just teammates. Even when you're sharing a garage with a stranger, rivalries form like cracks in concrete. Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon Alpine's short-lived duo proved that no amount of PR could mask disdain. Hungary 2022. Ocon refuses to let Alonso pass for multiple laps despite being slower. Alonso, seething, plays the long game. 2 weeks later, during the summer break, he drops the bombshell, signing with Aston Martin. Effective immediately. Alpine finds out through Twitter. Alonso later called it just business. But the way he left sudden, cold, unbothered said everything. Their engineers barely spoke. Their debriefs grew silent. Ocon's radio messages got sharper. When they touched wheels in Brazil, it was inevitable. And then there's the classic example of betrayal disguised as ambition. Daniel Ricciardo versus Max Verstappen. Ricciardo was the big dog at Red Bull. He had wins, charisma, pace. Then came Verstappen, the young phenom. Aggressive, unapologetic. Helmut Marko's favorite. Christian Horner's golden child. They clashed hard. Baku 2018 was the implosion. On lap 40, Ricciardo attempts a move. Max defends. Ricciardo tries again. This time, Verstappen shifts twice. Ricciardo rear-ends him. Double DNF. After the crash, the team says both are at fault. But internally, the signs are clear. Max isn't going anywhere. Ricciardo starts looking. By the summer break, he signs with Renault. A shock exit. No farewell gifts. No deep goodbye. Just an empty seat and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ricciardo later said, "It wasn't about fear. It was about feeling wanted. That wasn't racing politics. That was personal pain." And even in the most recent seasons, the cycle continues. Gasly versus Ocon, 2 Frenchmen raised in the same karting circles, now locked in a garage war at Alpine. They clashed in Jeddah, again in Spa. In Melbourne, they collided so badly that Alpine suffered a double DNF. At times, their race engineers sound like frustrated teachers managing a sibling fight. And inside the paddock, rumors swirl. Alpine's team boss, Otmar Safnauer, was reportedly forced to manage their debriefs in separate rooms. Ocon's contract wasn't renewed. Gasly smiled more more after that. By now, you've seen the pattern. Every generation in F1 gets its fire starters, and the 2021 season. That wasn't just a rivalry. That was war between two philosophies, between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. Hamilton had already rewritten the history books. 7 world titles. Most wins, most poles, chasing immortality. Max was the challenger, younger, bolder, raised by Jos Verstappen to fear no one. He didn't flinch. Not in Bahrain, when he overtook off track and gave the place back. Not at Imola, when he forced Hamilton wide into turn 1. Not in Spain, when he chopped across at the start. And definitely not in Silverstone. Lap 1 Copse Corner, 51G crash. Max in the wall, Hamilton wins. Red Bull says it's desperate and disgusting. Toto Wolff sends emails to the FIA mid-race. Christian Horner threatens legal action. And behind the scenes, F1 fractures. Brazil. Max forces Lewis off track, no penalty. Jeddah. Max brake tests. Hamilton. Abu Dhabi. Title decider, tied on points. Final lap. The FIA bends the rulebook. Lapped cars move aside only between the two contenders. Max, on fresh tires, overtakes Hamilton. Wins the championship. Hamilton? Silent. He disappears from social media for 56 days. Even now, they don't talk. Not really. Every handshake feels rehearsed. Every glance, calculated. And that rivalry didn't just live in the garages, it tore the sport in two. Mercedes versus Red Bull. Toto versus Horner. Fans picked sides like football ultras. Every rule change, every penalty, every incident sparked Twitter war zones. It was personal and it still simmers. But that wasn't the only active fire in the paddock. Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen go way back. To karting, to 2012, to races where Max's dad allegedly threatened race officials for punishing his son. Back then, Charles was the elegant one, precise, clean, strategic. Max, brute force in a helmet. They crashed so often that Charles once said, "I think we touched more times in karting than we have finished races." Fast forward to 2019, Austria. Max in the Red Bull dives into turn 3, pushes Charles wide, takes the win. Charles is stunned, no penalty. Next week in Silverstone, Charles returns the favor. Wheels bang, elbows out. The gloves are off. In 2022, their rivalry turns into a championship fight briefly. Leclerc wins 2 of the first 3 races. Max strikes back in Saudi Arabia. They go wheel to wheel 5 times that season. Max wins the title, but Charles, quietly seething. He says Max was smart. He drove to the regulations. Translation? He's playing the system better. Off track, the smiles are tight. On track, respect barely masks the hunger to destroy. Then there's George Russell, the silent threat. He arrives at Mercedes in 2022. Many expect him to play the apprentice. Instead, he outqualifies Hamilton 13 times, beats him in points, wins a race before Lewis does that year. Suddenly, it's awkward. Brazil 2022. Russell wins. Hamilton finishes second. No wild celebration, no chest bumps, just quiet nods. In 2023, the tone shifts. Japan GP Russell refuses to yield. Lewis calls him aggressive over team radio. Russell says, "I don't want to be his wingman." A team built around one icon now balances 2 egos. They're not enemies, but they're not teammates in the true sense either. They're gladiators in the same armor, both chasing legacy. But no rivalry in recent years has imploded as messily as Alonso versus Hamilton 2.0. In 2023, Alonso is reborn in the Aston Martin. Podiums. Praise. Then, Belgium lap 1. Hamilton squeezes. They touch. Alonso roasts him over team radio. This guy only knows how to race when he starts first. No apology, no handshake. Just decades of tension resurfacing like a scar never fully healed. Their rivalry spans 15 years. From McLaren in 2007 to wheel in 2023. They've driven for 6 different teams between them. But whenever they're on track together, there's no love-only memory. And memory in F1 is permanent. Even when the helmets come off, the wounds stay fresh. Rosberg doesn't speak with Hamilton. Webber doesn't text Vettel. Villeneuve still calls Schumacher dirty. Leclerc still sounds bitter when he loses to Max. And Gasly? He still won't fully smile next to Ocon. Because in Formula 1, rivals are the mirrors you hate looking into. They remind you of every point you lost. Every podium you gave up, every title that slipped away, not because of skill, but because of politics, misjudgment, or someone else playing dirtier. These aren't just racing stories, they're human stories. Of friends who became enemies, of teammates who became strangers, of champions who carried scars, not just trophies. F1 has always been about the fastest car, the bravest driver, the most flawless execution. But behind every stat is a story. Behind every story is a rivalry. And behind every rivalry is a line once crossed that there's no going back. Because in Formula 1, you don't just fight for wins, you fight for respect. And once you lose that, you're not racing anymore. You're at war.